My name is Carter, 38 years old, a technical sergeant with the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. I've served in the military for 18 years, with multiple deployments to Iraq and Syria. Most recently, I was stationed in Hasaka, Syria, on an 8-month mission. One morning, deep in the desert, I received an email from Rachel, my wife of 14 years. The subject line read, "Let's be mature about this." The body consisted of just 3 sentences. She had filed for divorce, emptied our joint bank account, and moved her new boyfriend Derek into our home in Idaho. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, showered in the communal stall, suited up, and reported for duty. That night, I responded with a single word: understood. No arguments, no begging, no threats. Mason, my bunkmate, sensed something was off. He asked, "You good, man?" I simply said, "Just some stuff back home." He nodded and said nothing more. In the military, we know when to give each other space. Truth is, I wasn't all that surprised. 6 months before my deployment, Rachel had changed. She stopped asking about my day, started working overtime at the dental clinic, hit the gym 3 times a week but never broke a sweat, bought new clothes, made new friends I never met, and changed her phone password. I didn't confront her, didn't check her messages or follow her around. That's not who I am, but I wasn't blind either. So I took precautions. I stored important documents, birth certificates, our marriage license, and the house deed, which only had my name thanks to the VA loan, in a storage unit across town. I also put my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silverware there. Then I opened a separate account at another bank and redirected part of my pay there, not enough to draw attention, but enough so I wouldn't be starting from scratch if things went south. The night before I deployed, Rachel hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe." Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a husband, heading into a combat zone. I should have seen it then. I met Rachel at a friend's barbecue back in 2009 during my leave between deployments while staying with a buddy in Idaho. She was finishing her nursing degree but later chose a clerical job at a dental clinic, said it was less stressful. We got married 9 months later. Rachel used to say she was proud of my service, though she never really understood it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist. No military background in her family. She once asked me when I'd get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years the military wasn't just something I was doing, it was a career. We bought our home in 2013. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a quiet neighborhood. My name was the only one on the loan because it was through the VA, but I added hers to the title because that's what married couples do, share things. My dad passed away a year after we got married, heart attack while shoveling snow. My mom died 3 years later of lung cancer, though she'd never smoked a day in her life. They left me a modest inheritance, enough for Rachel and me to pay off our student loans and have a financial cushion. During our marriage, I deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq, twice to Syria. Each time I came home, Rachel seemed more distant, like she was playing a role she'd long since outgrown. One time, when I mentioned re-enlisting for another 4 years, she said, "I didn't sign up to be a military wife. I'm tired of always being alone." I understood. I really did, but the military was the only place I ever felt I truly belonged. It was where people relied on me, where I was good at what I did. Wearing the uniform made me feel like I mattered. But starting in 2023, things started to unravel. Little things at first. Rachel growing annoyed when I called during her girls' nights, mentioning how her best friend Melissa had divorced and was living her dream life, saying, "We no longer had anything in common." I suggested counseling. She just laughed and said it was just a phase. But then came the late nights at the clinic, weekend trips with friends I never met, new clothes, and a gym membership that barely got used. Asheen said something, but my father raised me differently. Think before you speak, be certain before you act. So I watched, I prepared. Something in my gut told me things were about to blow. And when you're military, You learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after the divorce email, I was eating lunch in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. A bank app notification. A withdrawal. $92,300. Nearly everything we had left. I set my fork down and opened the app. Our joint account had exactly $22.37 left. The $52,600 we had saved over the years? Gone. Drained into an unfamiliar account. Murphy, a guy from my unit, glanced over. Bad news? I let out a dry chuckle. Just some account stuff. That night, I called the bank from the base phone center. They confirmed Rachel had been moving money for weeks, starting with small amounts, then gradually increasing. The large transfers began right after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time. Around me were voices of soldiers calling home, laughter, kids giggling through the line, while my life quietly crumbled around me. Mason found me. Alvarez said, "You look like you'd seen a ghost at dinner. You good?" I rarely share personal stuff, but Mason had pulled me out of a tough spot once in Hasaka. I owed him that trust. My wife emptied our accounts, kicked me out of my own house, and filed for divorce while I was out on patrol, I said, as calmly as if I were reading the weather report. Mason didn't say that's rough or you'll find someone better. He just asked, "Got a plan?" "Not sure yet." He nodded. "Whatever you need, say the word." That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Rachel must have forgotten I still had access to. The screen showed a strange truck parked in our driveway. A man I didn't recognize was walking my dog. He was using my coffee mug, wearing my Seattle Seahawks jacket. And Rachel, she was laughing in the kitchen. I had personally renovated, each tile laid by hand during my last leave. Something inside me shifted. Not rage, something colder, sharper. I shut the laptop, picked up my phone, and made a list. Call Ethan, my Army buddy turned lawyer. Review VA home loan terms. Contact my senior sergeant about emergency leave. Revisit the refinance documents Rachel casually mentioned last year. Secure my military pension and retirement accounts. I no longer felt sad, not even angry. I felt clear, focused, like I was preparing for a mission. At 5 a.m. before my shift, I sent Ethan an email. Need legal help. Discreet and urgent. An hour later, he replied, "Call me." Secure line. When I hung up that call, I knew exactly what needed to be done. No shouting, no threats, no confrontation, just patience and watching. I decided to let Rachel's own actions become her trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. Quietly, without telling anyone, no messages, no phone calls, no warning. I checked into a small motel in downtown Idaho under a different name and contacted Ethan. We met at a diner nearly 12 miles outside the city. "You look like hell," Ethan said, sliding into the booth. "Feel like it too," I replied. He handed me a stack of documents. House deed, loan paperwork, bank statements. Then he pulled out a separate sheet. This one's interesting. It was a refinance application with my signature, except it wasn't. The middle initial was wrong. The strokes were off. Someone had tried to mimic it, but they hadn't fooled a guy who trained his signature on military orders for nearly 2 decades. "She did this?" I asked, though I already knew. Ethan nodded. 3 months ago, she applied for a cash-out refi and pulled out $368,000 from the home's equity. VA loans in your name only, so your actual signature is required. I clenched my fists. She forged my name, took out a second mortgage on the house, drained our savings, and served me divorce papers. Real multitasker. Ethan shrugged. "It gets better. She listed her boyfriend as the co-applicant. He's got 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. What do I do now? Ethan leaned forward. Depends on what you want. Do you want to reclaim what's yours or teach her a lesson? I thought for a moment. I want to protect what belongs to me. And I want her to understand every action has consequences. Ethan gave a tight smile. Then we've got work to do. The next day, I drove past the house. Her boyfriend's truck wasn't there, but Rachel's silver sedan was still in the driveway. I didn't knock. No need. Instead, I headed to the bank and met with the loan officer who'd handled the refinance paperwork. I showed my military ID, the signature on my driver's license, and the forged application. His face went pale. "I'll have to report this immediately." "I understand," I said. "I've already filed a police report." That night I got a text from Rachel. "What did you say to the bank?" Derek said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day I went to the county clerk's office and filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to suspected forgery. I registered a formal notice. No changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Rachel called. I let it go to voicemail. "Arter, we need to talk. The bank just called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can talk like adults." That last line, the same as the subject of her email. Still, I said nothing. Ethan called later that afternoon. They froze the refi funds. "And there's more. Her boyfriend got arrested this morning while driving your truck. That's still registered under your name, right?" "Yeah." "Well, he got picked up for driving on a suspended license. But the kicker? The cops found some interesting stuff in the vehicle. Prescription pads from the dental clinic where Rachel works. And they weren't blank." I closed my eyes. "She's been stealing prescription pads?" "Looks like it. Police are investigating now." I hung up and sat on the edge of my motel bed. This was spiraling far beyond anything I had imagined. A part of me wanted to call Rachel, to warn her. Old instincts, I guess. But then I remembered the security footage. My house, my dog, my life, handed away like it meant nothing. No, this was the path I had chosen. I was seeing it through. And honestly, I didn't want to turn back. Next morning, I met with the bank fraud investigator. His name was Thompson. Short, tired-looking, with a coffee stain on his tie. "This happens more than you'd think," he said, spreading paperwork across the desk. "Spouse deploys, the one at home sees an opportunity." "What happens now?" I asked. "We've frozen the refi account, but there's a problem." And looked up. Some of the money's already gone, about half, roughly $146,000. I clenched my jaw. I want to know where that money went. Thompson hesitated. "Technically, I'm not supposed to disclose." "This is my house. My name was forged. My money was stolen." He paused, then slowly turned his monitor toward me. "These are the withdrawals from the refinance account." I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to someone named Grant Wallace. Not Derek. A name I'd never heard before. "Who's Grant Wallace?" I asked. Thompson shrugged. "Not in my department. Your attorney can subpoena more records." As soon as I left the bank, I called Ethan. "Grant Wallace?" he repeated. "Let me look him up." An hour later, Ethan called back. "Got him. Grant Wallace is a real estate broker who specializes in fast cash sales. And I think Rachel was planning to sell the house." The realization hit me like a gut punch. She was going to sell my house? Looks that way. The transfers were likely earnest deposits to get Wallace started on the listing. Ethan paused. "But here's the twist. Wallace has done deals with Derek Shaw." "Derek Shaw, Rachel's boyfriend?" "Exactly. They've closed 3 property deals in the past 2 years. This wasn't just romance." I sat on a park bench, head spinning. Could this have been planned? I did some digging on Derek. He has a pattern. Gets involved with women going through separations or whose spouses are deployed. I found at least 3 similar cases. The homes were all sold well below market value. Wallace handled the listings, and Derek got a cut. Then he disappeared. What about Rachel? Hard to say. She could be another victim, or she might be part of it. I buried my face in my hands. This wasn't just a messy divorce. It was organized fraud. And the worst part? I wasn't the only one. "I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division," Ethan said. "It crosses state lines, involves military personnel and VA loans. They're very interested." That night, I sat alone in my motel room with a cold beer in hand, staring into the dark. I wondered, Had Rachel ever loved me, or had I been a background character in someone else's financial scheme? My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Carter, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud. Derek got arrested for driving your truck." I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the screen, then typed, "Who is Grant Wallace?" The typing dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared, then disappeared again. Finally, she wrote, "I don't know what you're talking about." I stayed firm. $146,000, multiple transactions, house listing. 10 minutes of silence. Then a single line, "Is not what you think." I turned off my phone. No response this time. The next morning, Ethan called. "The FBI wants to meet with you. They've been monitoring Derek and Wallace for months. You might be the missing piece that helps bring this whole thing down." For the first time since that divorce email, I felt something close to justice, not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally surfacing. I met with agents Morgan and Bennett at the FBI field office in Idaho. They collected everything Ethan and I had gathered, documents, recordings, photos. They took my full statement. "Your case helps establish a pattern," Morgan explained. "This isn't a one-off scam, it's organized fraud." "What about Rachel?" I asked. The agents exchanged a glance. Bennett answered carefully, "We're still evaluating her level of involvement. Did she ever mention any financial strain?" I thought back to those last few months. Rachel had started talking about how we were house poor, suggesting we downsize. But truthfully, with my military pay and a VA loan, our mortgage was well under control. "When she starts saying that?" Morgan asked while taking notes. "About 6 months ago, around the same time she probably met Derek and started the refinance paperwork behind my back." "Did she ever talk to you about refinancing the house?" Bennett asked. I shook my head. "Never. She forged my name while I was deployed." They asked more questions, jotting down every detail. When the interview ended, Morgan handed me a business card. "We'll be in touch. In the meantime, do not engage with Rachel or Derek. We need to build this case properly." I nodded, understood. That evening, I drove past the old neighborhood, parking a few houses down. Derek's truck was back, probably bailed out from impound. Rachel's car wasn't there. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "We need to talk. Can we meet at Riverfront Park tomorrow morning?" The next morning, I had breakfast with Ethan and showed him the text. "Don't go," he said. "Nothing good comes from that conversation right now." "I know," I replied, "but I want to see what she's really doing while she thinks I'm off meeting her." We parked across the street from the house at 9:30. At 9:45, Rachel came out, got in her car, and drove away, heading straight toward Riverfront Park. "Now what?" Ethan asked. We wait. 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. The logo on the side read Wallace Realty. Derek stepped out and shook hands with Grant Wallace on the front lawn. Then they both went inside. "Should we follow?" Ethan asked. I shook my head. "No need. I installed security cameras last year. Inside and out. All footage uploads to the cloud." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You never mentioned that." "Never came up," I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and tilted the screen toward Ethan. There they were, Derek and Wallace in my living room. Wallace was taking photos, Derek was pointing out features. I turned up the audio. "I'll have it listed by the end of the week," Wallace said. "Already have a cash buyer interested." "For how much?" Derek asked. "We'll list at $510,000. They'll offer $456. Everyone's happy." "What about the husband?" "Rachel says he's being a pain." Wallace waved dismissively. "Military guys always are. They make noise, then disappear on deployment. He'll settle just to make it go away." I turned to Ethan. "You getting this?" He was already recording on his phone. I forwarded the live feed and camera access to Agent Morgan with the simple message, "Happening now." 30 minutes later, FBI agents swarmed the house. I watched from a distance as Wallace and Derek were led out in handcuffs under flashing lights. My phone rang. "Agent Morgan." We caught everything. Fraud, wire conspiracy, attempted unlawful sale of property. The evidence is strong. I'm ready to make a full statement. "So your wife Rachel, she just showed up at the scene. She looks shaken." I looked down the street. Rach was standing on the front lawn, hands over her face, frozen in place as agents carried out boxes of evidence from the house. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale. "What happens to her?" I asked. "Think depends," Morgan said, "on what she knew, and on what you want." I didn't say anything, just stood there. 13 years of marriage, some of them truly good, until everything became just a performance. "I just want things to go back where they belong," I told Agent Morgan. "After everything, that's all I really wanted." Case moved faster than I expected. Derek and Wallace both took plea deals, turning on each other and naming a web of conspirators in a 3-state scam that targeted military families separated by deployment. Rachel insisted she knew nothing about the broader scheme. Claimed Derek told her I was hiding money, planning to leave her penniless. Said the refinancing idea came from him and she just went along with it. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. In the end, she agreed to a civil settlement, full repayment of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to our house or my military pension, and a signed confession admitting she forged my name. In exchange, I chose not to pursue criminal charges. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that first email from Husica. No messy court battle, no drama, just a quiet ending to what once felt like a forever kind of marriage. The day I signed the final papers, Agent Morgan called. Derek Shaw was sentenced to date 8 years, fraud, identity theft, federal conspiracy. Wallace got 12. "Thanks for letting me know," I said. "There's something else," she added. "We found they scammed 11 other military families. Your case helped us connect the dots. Those families have a shot at getting their homes and money back because of you." After I hung up, I sat on the porch of my rental, watching the sun slip behind the rooftops. I thought about those other soldiers, men and women, who came home after giving everything, only to find their homes empty. I never set out to expose a criminal ring. I just wanted to protect what was mine. But life has a way of working differently than we plan. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. "I never meant for things to end like this." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. A year later, I sold the house. Too many ghosts in the walls. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a quiet creek out back. No neighbors for miles. I took early retirement. 20 years of service was enough. I'd given more than I realized. It was time to reclaim something for myself. I adopted a German Shepherd, Scout. During the day, I did carpentry work for locals. Nothing fancy, building tables, fixing fences, patching roofs. Kept my hands busy and my mind still. The pension handled the rest. Sometimes I thought about Rachel, not with hate, not even sadness, just silence. I'd heard she moved back to Oregon, started over at another dental clinic. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I didn't feel anything about her anymore. She'd made her choices, I'd made mine. One afternoon, I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband, a Navy man, had nearly lost everything in the same scam Derek and Wallace ran. The FBI gave her my name. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but you helped us keep our home. Thank you for fighting back when walking away would have been easier." I read it twice, then pinned it to my refrigerator. Some days, when the silence in the cabin pressed too hard, I'd look at that letter and I'd remember something good came from all this. Last I heard, Derek was still in prison. Wallace too. And me, I'm still moving forward. One quiet day at a time, building a life no one can steal, no one can forge, no one can betray. A life that's completely mine. If you've ever seen yourself in the painful choices of a character, leave a comment, hit like and subscribe to Vengeance of Max. We still have many truths to uncover. Thank you for listening. Until the end, every view, every minute you spend with these stories fuels us to keep telling tales of heartbreak and rising from the ashes.